Hello everyone. After going over the basics of what an API is and the different types of HTTP methods and how we can create one, I'll be showing an example using Python and the Fast API library um, in order to make our own. I'll demonstrate the basic foundations of all the CRUD methods, right? We have the post, get, update, or put and delete, right? Um, Here's some requirements. We'll need any ID. It doesn't really matter what you use. That's your preference. I'll be using Python to code in Fast API. We install using the pip package manager, so it would be through the terminal. And once again, if we read through the instructions, it'll just tell you that you downloaded via pip. So I believe it's pip install fast API. So make sure you do those steps before you're able to follow along. We'll be making a simple to-do list. So as we can see, I'm already in my project. I'll call it main, right? And for now, this will be what I'll be putting all of my code in. I won't separate it into different files. We'll talk about that later. So one thing I want to do is I'm going to have my own virtual environment. The way that I do that is Python -m, which it's a flag, and I guess it stands for make. And we'll be making a virtual environment. And when I do .venv, this will be where the virtual environment folders are stored. So for Mac, I believe it's 3. That's correct. Python 3 and pip 3 for Mac. And for Windows, it's just Python, as you can see. This is for Mac. This would work for Python for Windows. Now, how do we activate the virtual environment that I just spoke of? The way that we run scripts in Mac is we type source, right? And right now we're in the root of the project, and for some reason we don't know the path or whatever. It's kind of complicated. I understand sometimes, right? We can simply just right click on activate and copy relative path, I believe. So if we do source and then I copied it, perfect. And it says right there it's .venv bin activate, right? So this will run the script. We know that the virtual environment is now on because it says this. Sometimes it'll be in green, right, before my name. So as long as it says that, now you have activated the virtual environment. The way that you run the script is the same relative path, except you don't type in source, you just type the path and it'll run the script. So perfect. Now we need to install Fast API. So let me just make sure that I don't have it. And I don't, I only have pip. Perfect. All right, so I'll do pip install Fast API standard. And now that's downloading into my virtual environment. So the first thing that I need to do is instantiate Fast API. If you saw the documentation right there, then we notice that we instantiate Fast API by doing by storing it in a variable, right? Kind of like Java, right? So now I need to import Fast API. Now I can use any command from Fast API if I were to just do app dot etc. Now let's make our first get method. So let's do, this is the syntax to be able to make a get method. So app.get, and then I almost forgot, we need to tell it like what the URL is, right? So I'll just do slash. If we remember, there are a few things that a API needs to have, and that is, or any HTTP method, and that is the HTTP method itself, right? The endpoint, which is right here, the body, and as well as the headers, which are the metadata of the body. So we have the HTTP method, and we also have the endpoint. Now we need to, now that when we do backslash, or when we run the server, it'll be on localhost, and when we do localhost, it'll trigger this get method, right? But what is it gonna do at the moment? Nothing. So we need to tell Fast API what this will do. And what we want this to do is we just simply want it to return hello world. So I'll just make a function and I'll have it return hello world. Perfect. Great. Now, if you're wondering how do we, how does this work? What is this? How do we do a function in Python? This is exactly how we do it. If you have more questions on like the Python syntax, once again, I highly encourage you to look at the python.org documentation, or even W3 Schools. They're like a third-party documentation website for pretty much anything when it comes to web development, when it comes to learning things about data structures, when it comes to things about databases, anything. So they're a more friendly documentation. They're very nice, and they're community driven. So make sure to check those out. W3 Schools or the main documentation. It doesn't get better than those two. So we have now created our method. This won't work right at the moment, and that's because we need to run the server. The way that we run the server is going into our terminal. We need to make sure that we're on the root of the project, and we just type in, I believe it's Fast API Dev. Perfect. So now our server is running, and it's telling us that it's on localhost port 8000. So if we type this in, if we put this in the browser, then because we did backslash, right, it'll now return hello world. Great. Now we have created our own endpoint. This is our own API. There are tools that are for testing APIs, more friendlier versions, because doing it in the browser might not be as efficient. Maybe we want to save the endpoints in order for us to use them later, right? We don't want to be typing them out every single time. So I have one called Hopscotch. The most popular one out of all of these is Postman, which I don't really use. I like Hopscotch because it's open source and it's 100% free. So feel free to download either or whichever one you prefer. Anyways, they look the same, except the names are different. So let's call it through here and not through the browser. I'll create, I'll just, I guess, can I close this one? Okay, I'll just rename it. So as we can see, HTTP method, right? URL, we have our headers that'll leave empty. We also have our body, etc. It's the exact same thing, right? it just in a nicer way. So this is, we're gonna call her get, and the URL is localhost/8000, and if we click on send, it'll return hello world. So it's the same thing, and this is the body of the return. Now, like I mentioned before, we're going to be creating our own to-do list, the basics of a to-do list. And what this to-do list will have, so we'll have an object that we can pass on to a to-do item, right? For a to-do list, there are many to-do items. And what does a to-do item consist of? It consists of an ID. We want to be able to uniquely identify the to-do item. We also want to have a description, right? What is the to-do item? And we want to be able to have like a checkbox whether it is complete or not. So that'll be a Boolean. This will be of type int, right? This will be of type string, and this will be of type Boolean. I want to be able to do all basic HTTP methods. I want to be able to create, or post a to-do item, right? I want to be able to read or get a to-do item. I also want to be able to update or put a to-do item. And last but not least, I want to be able to delete it, or in HTTP methods, it's delete a to-do item as well. So 4 different API calls that we'll be doing. Now, where am I going to be storing this? For now, I'll just be storing it in a array. And this array will consist of to-do items. Now this will be where we will be storing it. And this will store an array of to-do items. Let's close this. And like I mentioned before, this will be one thing that we will do, or actually we'll just have it all in one file, which I won't believe is a problem. We'll create a class, we'll call it to-do item, and it'll inherit the traits from base model, right? And what is our to-do item? Well, as I just said above, it contains an ID, which is of type int. It also contains a description, which is of type string, and it contains an is complete Boolean, which is of type Boolean. Now, let me just import this before I quickly explain what we're doing here. One thing that Fast API does is also download Pydantic, what is Pydantic? Well, Pydantic is a way for us to be able to have types, to enforce types in Python. So let's look this up. It's a separate library. Okay, a lot of AI stuff, but it allows for us to be able to force types through API calls, right? Because when we look at Postman, when we look at Python, we don't have to say that this is a string, right? Which is kind of not good. If we want to pass a string, we want to make sure it's a string. And if we can say its type, then it'll help us to prevent some errors, right? So right here, base model is the main class that Pydantic has in order for us to be able to create objects. And what we're saying here is I want ToDo item to inherit all the functionalities of base model. So let's look at this. So we have a ToDo item, right? And every ToDo item will have an ID, a description, and a string. So this is how we create a basic Pydantic model. And something that I'll mention is we want to have a description that we can also declare, like whether this is optional or not. Field is not defined. So if we hover over the method, as I mentioned before, we can learn more about the method itself. And we can say, and I'll show you the one that I'm looking for, or maybe it's not here. Should be default. Well, I guess there's a lot, but anyways, the one that I'm looking for is default, and we can make the default as just blank. I'll also make this the default to be false, because by default it's not completed, right? So we'll make this false. Something else that we want to do is the array where we will be storing it in, and that is, we'll just call it a ToDo array, ToDo item array. The type will be array, right? And it'll be able to contain ToDo items. So why does this not work? So the reason why that does not work is because this is how we declare it to be an array. I completely forgot. That this is how we make it an array or a list in Pydantic, right? It's not just the brackets. So here, this ToDo item array is an array that is able to hold ToDo items, and this is our ToDo items. Now, how do we initialize a ToDo item object? I'll show you that. Example 1. The way that we create a ToDo item object is simply by doing this. Description, sample, and I actually don't even have to initialize the is complete, but I'll do it anyways. To-do item is not defined, and that's because I misspelled it. So this is how we create a to-do item object or any Pydantic object, right? We fill it out with what I said here. See, it's able to hold an ID, a description, and a Boolean. And by default, the description is empty and is complete Boolean is false. So great. I'll make another one, right? I'll make 3 in total. Boom. Boom. 2, 3. And I'll call this hello world. Perfect. What I'll do now is to do item array dot append. Now the first thing that we'll do is create a API call with the method of get. We'll make it tasks, right? We'll call it tasks. And what this will do is we'll get all tasks. Oops, I almost forgot something, backslash. That's very important. And all this will do is it will return the to-do item array. Great. Lots of errors. Important. There we go. So what I mentioned before does not work because as we can see this error, it says the list, which is the to-do item array, only takes 1 argument. I just want to, out of curiosity, right? This is technically 1 item or 1 argument. This should work. Great. And it's reloading and it does. Perfect. Now let's go to Hopscotch or whatever API tool that you're using. And what is it that I called it? Our method is tasks. Okay, great. So localhost tasks, right? We'll call this get tasks. Oh, okay. I need to create a collection. A collection is a fancy name for folders, or a folder, right? For our specific project, there could be many. There could be collections within collections, right? It's for us to be able to organize like our different endpoints, right? We could be working with multiple projects, right? And we want to organize our projects within their own collections, because otherwise it'd just be a million API calls when you get into like the workforce, and you want to make sure that things are organized. So what will we call this collection? To-do list. Perfect. Okay, we'll store this, not get tasks. Well, yeah, I mean that is what it's called, right? So we'll store within the to-do list collection, right? And we can see that it is stored within the to-do list collection, and that should be it. Let's click on send. Perfect. As we can see here, we get our 3 different items that we stored in the to-do list array, right? Now, as I mentioned before, this is supposed to be, the ID is supposed to be unique, right? That's the whole point of an ID. I won't make it unique at the moment. Let's just get on to our API calls. The next one that we'll do is we'll make let's see, we want to read, we want to update, we want to create. Let's do the create one. What is it again? It's post. So we'll do backslash or forward slash task create, I guess. And we want to create task. And now our body won't be empty. For the task, the previous task, our body was empty because we were just getting. Now our post, we need to have something within our body. How do we tell Fast API that our API call will not have an empty body? Well, using Pydantic, we can describe it in a similar way as we did. Let's see if there's something similar as we did right here, right? A to-do item of type list, which holds to-do items. So let's use a similar description. To-do, what can we call this? To-do item, I guess, right? What will this be? It'll be to-do item, a to-do item. Ignore what happened there. I pressed the wrong key bind. And I'll save that. It's not over. And what this will do is we're going to append to the already existing array. And we will append that item being passed down. So let's make it return the new to-do item array, right? So it'll return like, oops, it'll return that. We add on to it, right? And if it adds on successfully, it'll just return the new array. So let's create a new request. Create task. Create task. It is of type post. What did I call this? It's task create. Okay. Task create. And we need to declare the type, right? It is of type. This is the body, or technically this would be like a header. And now we have told Fast API that we expect a to-do item to be passed on from the front end, right? So what is a to-do item again? It has an ID, it has a description, and it has an isComplete Boolean. Let's go back to Hopscotch for my case. Let's do just that. It has an ID, right, which is 2. I'll just call it 2. Let's ignore the errors for now. It has a description, which is, this is the second item. comma, and then is complete, right? Which is a Boolean. So I'll make this false. We don't even need to write that because by default it is false. So let's find out what the errors are. Missing field. So we're using JSON, which is JavaScript object notation. What I was doing was Python object notation. Now, when I pass a property, right, these are properties, these are values. If you know what hash maps are, it's the same concept. In Python, I don't need to have the quotations. In JSON, which this is, I do. In Python, a Boolean is with a capital letter, but in JavaScript, it's with a lowercase. So make sure you're following JavaScript object notation, otherwise known as JSON, to be able to correctly input your information using an API call. So we have get, we have post. Now let's create the delete method. And of course it'll be delete. The way that we'll be deleting this, the endpoint will be task/delete and then task ID, right? That's a parameter. So basically, it's a parameter within the URL, and it'll look, if we want to delete something, it'll look like this. You may have seen this in like websites and things like that. So that's what we're doing right there, a special type of API, because delete methods do not contain a body. So let's do that. Let's write the function delete task. How will we delete this from that array? We'll loop for ID item or IDX iter, right? Call it item and enumerate. This is another way of creating a for loop within Python, and we'll be enumerating through the array. Basically, this will give you the index, and this will give you the item. So if item dot ID is equal to task ID, one thing that I forgot to pass is the task ID itself, and this will be an int. We just need to make sure that it can be passed from the URL to this method, etc. Then what we will be doing here, if those things are true, then we will pop the item from the list. So to do item array pop, and this method takes in the index, which in our case is called iter or iteration. So perfect. Now let's do that in Hopscotch. So we need to remove this, right? We already have the HTTP method created. It doesn't take a body, like I mentioned before, so we need to make that as none. And this is the URL, except we're missing the task ID. Before I do delete something, let me just call it 123. Perfect. Now let me create one. All right. Boom. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Let me delete 3. Now it should only be 1, 2, 4. Boom. Detail not found. And that's because we're not giving it the reason why it says it's missing a parameter is because we actually need to make it return something. So I'll just do success. And if it doesn't, actually I'll make it return. Let's do item array. And then if it doesn't work, right, we need to be out of the variable. Then we need to make it return. What the heck? Oh my goodness, I can't type. Failure. Not found. Did I type it wrong? So I believe I found that this was the issue. Make sure we have a forward slash or backslash, whatever it's called. Great. Now we don't have 2 anymore. We only have 3. Let's do 4, right? We don't have 4, so we should expect an error. Failure. Awesome. Let's remove everything. 1, boom. Now let's delete 3. So this shouldn't work. Oh, I think I didn't run it. Boom. Empty array. Perfect. Just what we did. Now we're missing one thing. We're missing one thing, and that's the put method, right? So let's create it. Tasks / update, I guess. All right. This one we'll do update task. Tasks, we'll make this take update, right? And then we'll do task ID. Right, so we'll be updating that exact task. Task ID will be an integer. And the 2 things that we'll be passing on the 2 things are the task ID as well as, oops, this is supposed to be in here, as well as the updated task, right? And simply, what we will do is we'll loop. I'll just start commenting. We'll loop through ToDo item array, right? If the ID matches, then perfect. We will replace the description with the description and the is complete with the updated task. So for get rid of the braces, for ID or iter item in enumerate to do if task ID, same thing, is equal to item.id. Then what we'll do is, first of all, this should be, oh shoot, I took a screenshot. Now we just need to replace it. Replace the description as and the is complete. So item dot description is now equal to updated task description. Now item dot is complete is equal to updated task dot is complete. Return updated task. Updated task. If we didn't find that item, then we will return ToDo item not found. Okay, let's try that. First of all, we need to create a new one here. Update task. Change the HTTP method to put. And let me just make sure. Update. Okay, perfect. Update. So let me just see the ones that we have. It should be empty, or no. Okay, 1, 2, 3. All right, perfect. So I'll be updating 3. There needs to be a body, and I'll be passing the ID, right, which is 3. I need to also pass my updated description, and I will make that be, if I can type, Raphael is awesome. Now I also need to update that is complete, and I'll make this true, right? It needs to be lowercase. Perfect. Boom. Updated task. Great. So the previous one, the description was world, and the complete was false. Let's get it now. Awesome. So we don't have the old one. We have the new one that says Raphael is awesome and is complete is true. Great. With that being said, we have now created a very basic API. It can create to-do items, right? It can delete a task or a to-do item. It can update a task, and it can get all tasks. With this, we're able to start seeing how applications work in a very basic way. On the next video, we'll be doing this exact same API, except now we'll be working with a database where things can be saved permanently. Thank you. Bye.